Hello, everybody. Hope you're all good. We're back for another episode of A Cup of Joe. That's what we've got here. We've got a cup of tea, a cup of herbal tea, not a cup of Joe. So we're back on the herbal teas, and I've really been enjoying these podcasts as of late. If you can't really tell, this is the third one we've done in February so far. So I'm really enjoying just sitting down and talking over topics that I'm really interested in due to my past experience, but also just things I like to think about as it allows me to articulate them really well. And I just enjoy it. It's almost like a sense of expression, and it's a creative outlet for me as well to be able to, I don't know, link things together. I really enjoy it. I actually really fucking enjoy it. Like, this is what I enjoy. I like having conversations with people. I like having long conversations about all sorts of stuff and understanding why, what, who, when, whatever. So yeah, and I like drinking herbal tea while I'm doing it. Got a good old lemon and ginger. It's becoming a bit of a ritual, this, by the way. And it reminded me of, on Wednesdays, me and one of my buds, Charlie, we go to this place called Fix, which is like a wellness facility. We were meant to be going today, but I got a tattoo 10 days ago. Well, I got 2 tattoos actually 10 days ago. So I've obviously not been able to go to the sauna or swim, which has been killing me because I love to go to the sauna. And I go most days where I live as well. So it's been pretty difficult and tricky. But obviously we've not been able to go to this Fix. But it reminds me of there because in there they have like these speciality tea bags. I can't remember the name of the brand, but I might have to invest in some just for these sit down pods, because they have like focus teas, like relax teas. There's a few others in there as well. And it was the first time I ever had like a hot tea in a sauna. And I thought, is this going to work? Because they've got one of those, is it called a cooker or the quooker taps? I don't know how to pronounce it. The ones that give you hot water straight away. So you can have hot and cold when you're in there basically. And it was actually quite refreshing to have a hot drink in the sauna, and especially after the cold as well. So it's quite a nice contrast between the two. So I might have to grab some of those. But I'm looking forward to getting back to the sauna and the ice baths and going a little bit more consistently, because that facility there is unreal. And if you've not tried it and you're from kind of northeast Manchester area, then I would definitely head down. It's a really nice place to go. However, today I wanted to talk over a question actually, and it's a question that I heard on the Diary of a CEO. It was probably around about a year and a half ago. So it was a very long time ago, and it just goes to show how much things whiz round my mind. But obviously it's dipped in and out. And I do find that as well with when I listen to a book or when I listen to a podcast or a conversation, or even when I'm talking to people and I'm trying to get bits and bobs of information, I usually extract like one question or one golden nugget or one little thing from, let's say, a book or a podcast or a conversation that somebody has or that I have with somebody else. I'll take away like 1 or 2 things a lot of the time, and I'll think over them, and I'll kind of compare and contrast. I'll relate them back to myself and others in my immediate circle, and then obviously I'll use it within my coaching practice, and I'll kind of test it and push it back and forth, and then ask questions and push other people about it as well. And I'll see whether it's either true or false, or whether it is relevant with the topic area that we're talking about. And I think it's a really nice way, and I'm really grateful for that I have the platform to be able to do that as well. But I really like the way that I do that. But this question was from Stephen Bartlett. I don't know who it was to, but he asked him, are you driven or are you dragged? And I thought this was like a really cool question that I didn't really understand at the time. I had a good idea of obviously what he was getting at, but I didn't understand it to the level of detail that I understand it to it now. And that's because of the changes that I've gone on over the past 12, 14 months. You could even go back years, because it's been a very slow, gradual change. It's taken a long period of time. It's not just been all of a sudden, you make this change and then you're enlightened and then you can see everything. Obviously, there will be a time where that happens, but it takes a long time to get to that point. It's like it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. And that's a really good example of that. It takes 10 years of sometimes going over things and revisiting things for that thing to be embedded into your psyche. And I feel like that has almost kind of happened for me. And I thought it would be really good to talk over my own journey a little bit. And also this quote that I read, which almost prompted me to do this pod as well, because it was a really nice, I would say, passage. It's a little bit long for a quote from a guy called Eric Fromm, and his book, The Art of Loving, which I've not read, and it's on my reading list, by the way, which is an ever-growing reading list, which probably will never get finished, but it's nice to have a big collection of books that I would like to read or I'm interested in reading, so I never run out of things that I want to read. Even though sometimes I do get quite overwhelmed by the amount of things that I'm just trying to ram into my brain. That is definitely, I think it's a strength, but it's also like a great weakness as well. Do you know, like, obviously there's like a paradox. Sometimes the thing is the thing that causes something else to happen or whatever. And for me, that is almost like, that is a great strength, but also it's a great weakness, because although I can, ram loads of information into my brain and I am always interested in reading something else, quite commonly I can have information overload, because there can be contrasting views on certain things and I can't really get my head around it, and it really bothers me as well when I can't do that. So it's quite difficult. So I guess that's the price that you pay for, taking in so much information with things. But I thought this was really nice, and I wanted to link it back to my own experience as well, and talk over whether you are driven or whether you are dragged by, in particular, your work or your external environment or external influences. Because I think in today's age, there is a big issue with this, and especially around social media as well. I think with social media, everyone has a problem that it's always everybody's highlight reel, and everyone's showing the posh cars and the fancy watches and the sexy lifestyle that everybody has, and everyone has an issue with it. But I think a lot of the time we need to go upstream and we need to identify why these things are actually occurring in the first place. Like, why are they present and prevalent within society today? Because it's not always just looking at the symptom or the thing that's in front of us. Because if you look at the thing that's in front of us, it's not always going to be that's the issue. It's kind of like stimulus and response. That is the response to another stimulus, which is upstream from that situation or that problem itself. And that's a term that I heard from Dr. Rangan Chatterjee's book. He was talking about going upstream, and it was a really nice way of thinking about things. There's people who are just swimming against the tide, swimming against the current, and they're just constantly trying to keep up and keep going. And we're trying to rescue people from swimming against the current. So why don't we walk upstream and realize why people are falling into this fast-flowing river in the first place? Why are they tripping up and falling down the brow into the river, and then they're struggling to get out again? We need to look at the deeper issues that are at play a little bit upstream. And I think that's really apparent as well when it comes to addiction. A lot of people look at addiction and they think addiction is the problem. Addiction's the problem. Like, people are addicted to drugs or addicted to alcohol or addicted to scrolling on their phones or pornography or whatever, or sex. There's so many different addictions nowadays that you can have, or like buying things as well. But it's not always because it's just the addiction itself. Like, there are reasons why people fall into these behaviors and into these kind of behavior patterns which cause you to be addicted to certain things, and be over-reliant on these things as well, and search for these things, because the way that our brains are designed are to basically overcompensate, to fulfill something, to fill a void that you may have. So it's about going upstream, again, with addictions and things like that, and looking at why these things are happening in the first place. That's the bigger question that we need to ask. That's the greater perspective that we need to have. We need to take a step back. We need to look at these things and assess them in good detail, because once you do that, it's very similar to, a few weeks back when I posted the pod about kind of trauma and how your early childhood experiences can influence the way that you are in every single way. And it's because we sow seeds when we're younger, and these seeds grow into a huge tree and blossom out in many different ways. Now, if you've planted a negative seed, this is still going to grow and blossom There's still going to be branches and a thick trunk that's going to come off the back of this. So to rewire that, similarly, going upstream, we need to uproot that little seed and we need to plant a new one. Because if we plant a new one, then all of these behaviors that we might have won't happen. And that's very, very apparent to what I'm going to talk about today about, are you driven or are you dragged? And I'm going to start with this little passage. And this isn't my passage, by the way. I just saw this on Facebook, and Philosophy Thoughts, if there is a page that is for me, it's this one. So, take, for instance, a man driven to incessant work by a sense of deep insecurity and loneliness, or another one driven by ambition or greed for money. In all these cases, the person is the slave of a passion, and his activity is in reality a passivity, because he is driven, he is the sufferer, not the actor. On the other hand, a man sitting quiet and contemplating with no purpose or aim except that of experiencing himself and his oneness within the world is considered to be passive, because he is not doing anything. In reality, this attitude of concentrated meditation is the highest activity there is, an activity of the soul, which is possible only under the condition of inner freedom and independence. And I thought that was a really beautiful little reading, because over the past 12 to 14 months, I've slowed down so much when it comes to my work, because I felt like my work was controlling me at one point. It took me a long time to see that. And at one point it served me in many different ways, which I can touch on a little bit later. But when I started to slow down and I actually started to sit with my thoughts and not run away from my thoughts, not run away from myself, not fill my time with tasks and things and externals and the things that I should be moving towards, I then had to be confronted with the thoughts that came to the forefront of my mind. And what you'll probably find nowadays with a lot of people is they can't sit with their own thoughts. People can't be with themselves. And it's crazy because we are ourselves. And you may be sat there thinking, what are you on about? I am myself. I am with my thoughts. I am doing it right now. I don't know what you're on about. Well, you're actually consuming content now, actually. So you're probably, you're getting away from your thoughts. No, I'm only joking. Well, maybe. Who knows? Like everybody, well, I think that's probably one of the biggest issues that a lot of people have is like we're running away from things. We're running away from ourselves because we can't be with ourselves. If I was to say, go and sit on your own for 3 hours in a room with silence, could you do it? Could you go and sit there? Most people couldn't last 10 minutes before they're up, they're walking around, they're thinking, fuck, what do I need to do? I need to go and do this. I need to film a time, I'm writing to-do list. And sometimes I'm my own worst enemy with this. I'm not perfect. I do this too. And we fall into these kind of traps and behavior patterns that lead us away from being just with ourselves. And I think that's really powerful because what a lot of people are chasing through these externals is a feeling. They're chasing a feeling that they get. And that could be a feeling of safety. That could be a feeling of security. A feeling of happiness and fulfillment and purpose and power. There may be obviously negatives on the other side of the equation as well. But they're chasing a feeling. That's what people are looking for. And that's what people are always looking for. We are biopsychosocial beings, but we feel as human beings. And that drives us. We seek pleasure and we move away from pain. So how we feel dictates pretty much everything that we do and what we move towards and what we move away from. And it's really important that we acknowledge this and understand this because it's almost as if the system itself can trick us into certain behaviours that are completely subconscious that we don't know about. And just going back to my own journey over the past, I'd say 4 years since I started coaching, it was coming up to 5 years now actually. I actually checked the first client I had was 4 years and 8 months ago. Crazy. Ever look back to then and like how everything was running, the business was, and who I was as well. It was crazy. Like watching back over the videos and how I spoke, and yeah, it's just wild. I think if you don't look back and you don't cringe, you're just and you're just the same as what you were, then you're not taking steps forward. You're not putting your neck on the line to grow. Because I'm looking back and I'm cringing. And I don't know whether I'm saying that because I'm looking back and I'm cringing and nobody else is doing the same. But if I look back 5 years ago when I first started, that was kind of born out of wanting to build a life for myself, freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of situation. Like, I didn't want to be locked down in a position held by someone or something else. And I actually wrote an email recently and I was talking over why, do you control your life or does it control you? And I guess that's kind of the same question as, are you driven or are you dragged in some way? It's just kind of flipped on its head. And I was talking over kind of like employment versus unemployment and freedom of time and control, and why you want to have control and the ability to control your life, because time and attention are really the biggest assets that we have. They're the biggest things. They're the most important things that we own. Our time, and then what fills our time, which is our attention, right? And it's really important if we want to have control over those two factors as much as we possibly can, as frequently as we possibly can. Because if we don't, those two factors are going to be controlled by somebody else. And then you can then start to see, linking back to this question, are you the driver or are you being dragged by everybody else's stuff? And that's like a similar question to, are you a consumer or are you a creator when it comes to social media and even, you could say, the world nowadays? Are you a consumer of content? Do you just sit there and scroll and just take in and take in and take in and take in? Which, by the way, is not only negative. There are positives to that. Or are you a creator? Are you adding to this melting pot of information and giving your part and giving your bit? Are you kind of driving that force forward? Or are you being dragged by it? And I think it's a really good question. But I mean, after I first got started with my business, I was working as a waiter in Turtle Bay. Obviously, I was kind of working all sorts of hours, and I was probably sick of working the weekends and being around alcohol too much. But also, my mum died as well, and she passed away 6 years ago, which is crazy to think. How time flies, like, it's wild. How time flies, and yeah, it was that for me was a really difficult part of my life because I didn't really know what was going on. I think for that to happen at such a young age, especially at 21, it was so kind of world-shattering that I became so numb and I didn't really know what was going on at the time. But I think some of the things that I learned off the back of that, which were some of the biggest lessons that I've been able to learn in my whole life through assessment of that situation. And you have to turn your pain into purpose, right? You can't just let it drag you back. You can't just let these things act as an anchor. And it's not so much that I only now see my mum's death as a negative. I don't see that. I see it as a positive in some ways for me, because it's allowed me now, and I don't mean that in an obnoxious way, because I would do anything to have her back, but in a way that it's been able me to have a perspective and a view of the world that I would never be able to have if maybe that didn't happen. And that potentially might allow me to have impact with other people and live a life that's true to me, and then obviously have a ripple effect in many different ways. And if that was to come from the death of my mum, then that would be an amazing thing to come off the back of it. So that's what I mean by not only a negative but also a positive as well. But it allowed me to value time and view time in a way where we don't get unlimited time. I saw my mum unfortunately die over like a space of months, because that's what happens when you get terminal cancer. You find out that it's terminal, and at that point in time, you know that it's not going to get better from here. And I remember that for me was so difficult to get my head around. I couldn't conceptualize that. Like, what do you mean it's not getting better from here? I didn't understand it. I found that really difficult for me to be able to yeah, like get my head around, I suppose. And it still makes me like a little bit emotional now, to be honest, like thinking about it, because it's like you're told these things are going to happen before they even happen, and it's like a process. And that's why, you know, anybody who goes through a process like that is just so painstakingly hard, not only for the families, but I cannot even imagine if you are in that position. I cannot even imagine what it is like, you know, to be told information like that. Is crazy. But it makes you so grateful, you know, when something like that does happen. It makes you immensely grateful for the days that you do get. And, you know, we still have bad days. I still have low days. I've had so many low days the past 12 months. And there's been times where I have played the victim and I've not been grateful. But you come back to it because it's almost like a life mantra, or a belief that you carry, that you've learned, that is a part of your foundation now. It's part of the thing, the stilts that you've built, or the kind of the platform that you can build off, and it then allows you to grow in a more positive way. And I think being grateful of time, and knowing that it's not going to be here forever, is a really important concept that a lot of people need to understand and get their head around. Because again, one thing that a lot of people are running away from for their life is death. They're almost having blissful ignorance. It's almost as if they don't believe that that's going to happen, and they put it so far away from their immediate attention, or they took it so far to the back of their mind because they're so scared of it, that they don't see the true value in the moment. They don't see the true value in today, in the moment, because they don't fully understand that that's what's going to happen. It's almost as if they're ignoring the truth. It's like I guess people say to live, or to truly live, you have to know you're going to die, which is a really harrowing thing. And I don't want you to be, I can just see people listening to this and being like, oh my God, what is he chatting about? But it's true. You know, it's a paradox. It's like to have one, there must be the other. You know, to have the highs, there must be the lows. And the higher the highs, the lower the lows will be. And again, I'm like a frigging walking quote, but I've actually been writing down a lot of the quotes as of lately in this little book. No tree can grow to heaven unless the roots can reach down to hell. And again, you know, if you have unwillingly been forced to see how roots can reach down to hell, then, you know, hopefully your branches and leaves with a good little watering can, you know, bit of fertilizer, making sure to keep some sunlight on that bastard as well, can grow to heaven. But it's important to understand this. And going back to kind of like the work obsessed culture, like at the time, it was really useful for me to push on and focus my time on something that would take me away from my thoughts. So at that moment in time, I actually made the logical decision that it was too painful to be with my own thoughts. So I am then going to focus my time on something else. And I became work obsessed. And there were other issues at play that I didn't know about at that current moment in time, which I've become aware of over the past 12 months and worked through and continuing to do so. But I was running away. I was running away for a long time. And that's the same with a lot of people who are entrepreneurs and people who are really driven by money and entrepreneurship. And it's crazy because I love this concept of productivity purgatory that people talk about. And it's like self-development trap, like the business, the self-development, the work that you do on yourself, and even like ultra marathon runners that are just constantly doing more and more and more and more and more. It's like you're chasing something, you're chasing a feeling and a situation that you're trying to achieve, that you get momentarily. Once you then do achieve it, to then just go in search for it again. It's a feeling that we should have inbuilt within ourselves without having to chase that external. And again, I saw on The Diary CEO, and I don't really watch it too much anymore. I used to watch quite a lot of it. I think it's because of Stephen promotes Huel, and I tried a Huel, and oh my God, how can you say that tastes good? It does not taste good. Maybe I didn't try enough of them, but I'm not a meal replacement guy. Get yourself to the butcher's, get down to the fruit and veg shop, pardon me, and friggin' get some whole foods in you. Get to the fishmongers and start putting some meals together. That's the type of guy that I am. Friggin' meal replacement shakes. I'm probably being quite judgmental there, and I'm sure a lot of his stuff is still good, and I do still watch little bits and bobs of it with shorts and stuff. So I heard Stephen talking about one of the biggest drivers for success is actually trauma, and that being one of the biggest influential factors of why people push themselves to achieve things that are so grandiose and so big, because a lot of the time they're trying to fill a sense of insufficiency within themselves. And I think when we look at externals in general, and for me it was my business, because I was obsessed with work. I was basically a work addict in many different ways. And it's because I was trying to fill a feeling, a sense of insufficiency within myself. But this was totally subconscious, by the way. I didn't make the feeling that I don't feel good enough within myself. I'm not worthy. Then I'm going to go and work and achieve this and put myself out there for external validation to make myself feel good. I didn't make that conscious decision. That is something that happens completely subconsciously. And people run their way through life and get to these with these subconscious beliefs, running them as a puppet show, like I mentioned in the last one. Bit of a running theme here. So it's really important to slow down, to assess, to understand, and to have a self-awareness, to then think about, why is it that I am doing the things that I do? Why is it that I am being dragged? Why is it that I'm being controlled by this external? I'm committing so much time and effort just to pay for this car, just to get this next watch. I'm spending all my wages on a pair of nice trainers to go out on the weekend so I can be or feel or be perceived as someone. And when you are the one, it's not about being someone, you are the one. And this is very difficult because it goes against kind of almost like biology in some sense. And we look at a status hierarchy, and there is a status hierarchy, and we want to be high up on that status hierarchy because of mating opportunities and because we want to live a life where we can have good food and health and wellness, and we can look after the people around us. So that it's not just these things are only a negative, but we're wanting to strive towards these things sometimes from a sense of insufficiency. And if we are found to be too attached to externals, we are insecurely attached with ourselves. So if we're always trying to chase this next thing, and we're committing our life to it, we're devoting our life to it, and we found that our self-worth and how we think about ourselves and our self-regulation is very up and down in relation to the external, it means that we're outsourcing our self-worth too much to that specific thing. And if we do that, then you're always going to be at mercy of the external environment because you are not whole within yourself. You cannot find safety within yourself. And it's about coming back to that. It's about coming back to finding safety within yourself. It's about building that as a habit within yourself, because once you heal that wound, once you change that within yourself, you then do not need to go and externally validate yourself. You don't have to work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week to earn the money, to have the car, to have the house, to have the status, to have the body, to look like you are somebody who is valuable to other people. So then you can have all of these things that I've said related to the status hierarchy. It's a huge system that happens, overcompensation, that pushes people to do things and be a certain way to actually try and find a feeling that they should have within themselves. And going back to the start of the podcast, I was talking about going upstream. Everyone's looking at this current situation that I've just described there as chasing the externals. Oh, don't chase the externals. It's fine. It's not about that. It's like all these short-term, put a plaster on a broken arm sayings and answers to these large problems, when we need to go upstream and say, why are people chasing these things in the first place? Why is it that we are committing ourselves so heavily to these externals and we're controlled by them subconsciously that we don't even know about? Why is that? And it's because of these things of a sense of insufficiency. It's seeking validation, and our ego is running the show. And that is the scary thing about change, because you need to challenge your ego. We all have an ego. And challenging that ego and going through a process of ego death is not just a one-hit thing. It is a process, and it's something that happens over a long period of time, and you can change in many different ways with your ego. But there will be ways where it is largely controlling who you are, what you do, who you surround yourself with, and your whole environment if we don't become aware of this. And it's quite scary, because we then start to think, oh my God, this is a huge situation. And for others, it will be more than, for others, it will be definitely more than other people. And I guess it does depend on the feelings that you carry towards yourself and your upbringing and how you were brought up. And I guess, trauma in some sense as well. But it's about going back and learning about those things, being self-aware, and then letting your ego die. But that is such a painful process. When you have to go through a process of ego death to the core, especially when you've built your whole life to achieve these certain things, if you've been chasing these externals for 20 years, and then all of a sudden you come to the conclusion that all of these things that you've been chasing have been for nothing, because the thing that you've been chasing is a feeling, and you can get that feeling within yourself of safety, of worthiness, if you build that. If you build that relationship with yourself, if you heal those wounds, if you understand yourself enough, all of that time will feel like wasted time. It will feel as if like you have been chasing something, as somebody has lied to you, and you've gone down the wrong path for your whole life. Because that's certainly what it felt like for me. Last year, 2024, that was kind of a lot of the process within itself. I walked down the wrong path pretty much for the majority of my life, because that's what I was trying to seek, validation in many ways. And I don't feel ashamed saying that anymore. I felt really, when I found out, I felt so ashamed of myself that, oh my God, how can I let myself do this? But this is such a subconscious thing that we cannot control. And it led to so much suffering, because my whole life and who I was built up around this image that I portrayed of the coach, and everything that I did every day. When you work for yourself and you are self-employed, you organize your days and your time, and you work hard, and you organize things, and then you set things up to be productive, and then you work on yourself and your body and your self-development to make sure that you can, so on and so forth, and earn more money. And when I started to realize all these things, that I had to bring all of this down, I had to let this burn away, I realized that 80 to 85% of me had to go. And that's essentially when I started to have a little bit of an identity crisis, and an existential crisis simultaneously at the same time, because it was like, okay, if all of this is now gone, who the hell am I, and what the hell am I here for? Because I thought I was this person. Now I realize that I've not, and I've built my whole life around this persona and this idea. And then secondly, what the hell am I here for? Because everything I've done is to help others through this thing that I've built. And by the way, I'm not looking down on this, by the way. And I'm not saying that this is only negative, because it's been amazing, and it's given me the chance to get to where I am, to have these realizations, and to understand myself in this way, and to give myself the time and the freedom to be able to explore that, which is amazing. Like everything happens for a reason, I think in many different ways, which again is another podcast within itself. So it's not only a negative, and it's offered me the ability to have freedom of time and and get myself to a really good position in life where I can then start to really truly rethink. And I'm happy that I've been able to do this. I'm proud that I've been able to do this, and almost get through the other side because it was that difficult, but also because most people, I think, wait until they have a midlife crisis. Or some people don't even experience this for the whole life. And I think it's really important to be able to understand that. So if you're thinking, how the hell do I maybe start to understand myself a little bit more if I've not scared you off? Very similarly to previous advice on the different podcasts is self-examination and self-awareness and mindfulness. They are the very key start parts of transformational change, because you become an observer, because there is you, and then you can step outside of you, and then you can observe you and what you're doing. So you almost become an observer of the person who you are. So it's like there is multiple selves inside of you, which sounds pretty weird, but you become an observer and you start to think, okay, yesterday this happened and I'm doing this, and I find that I'm really, I really put myself out for this thing. Like, why? Why are you, ask yourself the question, why are you putting yourself out for that thing? Maybe it's because of this, or I've always done it. Okay, why have you always done it? It's because it's made me feel good, or why does it make you feel good? And then you can start to link things together and move through things. But also, I think just being truthful as well, and facing the truth is really important. A lot of the time we avoid the truth, we avoid the difficult things, and our mind is very smart at pushing the difficult and the scary and the painful emotions towards the back of our brain and hides them really well and patches over them. And this is what the ego is really good at as well, to stop us from experiencing them, because we're trying to avoid pain. But we need to almost willingly and consciously bring those things into the forefront of our mind and our attention, and almost like suffer. Like our JP always talks about this as like your willingness to suffer, and chosen suffering is an amazing way of being able to venture forward in life and create more fulfillment and purpose, and become a more whole human being. Because once you choose to suffer, once you choose to look the dragon in the eye, once you choose to listen to the painful emotions, it can make you grow as a person when you come out the other side, because you have a much greater perspective and understanding of who you are, your situation, and everything that's happened off the back of it. Now, I know I've been rambling and it's 40 minutes. So, hope it's been a good one. And yeah, just give it a bit of a thought. Are you driven or are you dragged? It's a lovely question to ask. Maybe that could be a really good place to start journaling around. But give it some thought. If you've really enjoyed this, let me know. Give the pod a bit of a rating. Share this with family or friends if you think they would find this really useful. And any feedback is always greatly appreciated. So drop me a message over on Instagram, or comment on the Spotify itself, or wherever you are listening on. Give it a bit of a rating and let me know. But I hope you enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to tuning again and hitting another one. Speak soon.